On May 19th, 1780, the people of New England looked up at the sky. They knew something was wrong, and watched the sun vanish. By noon, the world plunged into darkness. Birds fell silent. Livestock panicked. And terrified townsfolk believed Judgment Day had arrived. This is the story of the day the sun went out, and never returned the same way again. This is the fire of the sky. In May of 1780, spring lingered stubbornly in New England. Winter's grip had loosened, but chilly nights were still common. The threat of rain kept gardens and farmlands moist. So, when the morning of the 19th dawned fair and clear, residents of New England felt only optimism for the day ahead. Thomas Church, writing in his diary, said the day began clear and ordinary, and so they went about their business. Farmers tended their crops, shopkeepers opened their stores, schoolteachers gathered their pupils. It was just another Tuesday. But as the hours passed, a thick haze drifted in from the north, driven by winds nobody noticed until it was too late. The sky turned an unnatural shade. By 11 a.m., the sun glowed red like a dying ember, sending terrified glances skyward. A chill wind blew and animals began to panic. Dogs barked, chickens went to roost, and by noon, darkness swallowed the land. It wasn't a storm. It wasn't an eclipse. It was midnight, at midday. People dropped their work, rushing to windows and doors, craning their necks to see past the horizon, desperate to understand what was happening. In Boston, shopkeepers abandoned their sales, racing to ring church bells, hoping to rouse the dead from their graves. As dusk fell, the sun finally dipped below the horizon, touching the jagged teeth of the western mountains with blood-red light. Then it plunged into darkness, and the hills cast long shadows over valleys cloaked in night. Diaries from the time say chickens went to roost, frogs peeped, and people lit candles to eat their noon meal. For 8 hours, New Englanders experienced pitch-black darkness, broken only by the flickering lights of lanterns and candles. It felt like an eternity. People walked the streets in near silence, not speaking because there was no need. Everyone understood without words. The end of the world had come. And then, just as abruptly as it had fallen, daylight returned. People stared up in disbelief as the sun climbed back into the sky. Relief flooded through them like sunlight after a storm. They rushed out into the streets, embracing family and friends, laughing, weeping, thanking God for giving them a second chance. By evening, the darkness slowly lifted and the sun returned, bathing New England in the warm glow of twilight. It was as if nothing had happened. But everything had changed. It wasn't until nightfall that residents of New England realized the coast was clear. No earthquake had cracked the earth. No fire rained down from the heavens. There was no invasion. No one was coming to destroy them. But why had the sun gone out? What had caused this miracle, or was it a trick of the light? In the weeks following, people speculated wildly, spreading tales and rumors to explain the dark day. Some said the sun had moved to a different part of the sky. Others claimed it had been blown out by a blast of air. Still others thought it was the end times. Minister Enoch Story told his congregation that God had hidden the face of the sun for all to see his wrath. Across New England, the word spread like wildfire. Many believed the world was ending. Others saw it as a divine message, and all tried to make sense of the unthinkable, the day the sun didn't rise. For decades, the dark day was unexplained. It wouldn't be until centuries later that modern science would offer a clue, and that evidence points to massive forest fires in Canada. Here's how. If you've ever sat around a campfire, you know how smoke can fill the sky. When the wind shifts, it can choke out all light, turning day to night. But forest fires are bigger than campfires. And in 1710, a series of major wildfires swept through Canada. First, lightning struck dry brush in the forests of Maine, then quickly spread across the border into Canada. Fueled by high winds and an extended period of drought, the fires burned for months, blanketing eastern Canada in smoke. But smoke alone doesn't block out the sun. Light can still penetrate hazy skies. To blot out the sun completely, the smoke had to be mixed with something else, something heavy enough to trap the light and keep it from reaching the ground. Enter fog. In 1710, the weather records show that fog rolled into New England just after sunrise on May. The temperature plummeted, creating the perfect condition for thick fog to roll in and linger all day. The smoke from the Canadian fires mixed with the fog, creating a thick atmospheric blanket that trapped heat and light, blocking it from passing through. And while forest fires and fog are natural phenomena, something else was needed to push the smoke high into the atmosphere. That something was clouds. Luckily for those living in New England, there was no shortage of clouds in May of 1710. Storms rolled through the region several days before the dark day, leaving behind high-altitude clouds that rose high above the smoke. But when the smoke reached those clouds, it blotted out the sun, plunging New England into darkness. Evidence shows that the fires in Canada burned until July of 1710, but the sun never went out again. At least not until April 1713. But how could that be? You see, atmospheric conditions have to be just right for the smoke to block out the sun. If there's too much wind, it blows the smoke away. If there's too little, it sinks to the ground. If the fog burns off too soon, the light will pierce through. If there's no clouds to trap the smoke, it dissipates before it can do any damage. It's a rare set of circumstances, and it happened 3 years later in April 1713, when New Englanders experienced another dark day. And each time the sun went out, people marveled at the sudden darkness. But as time passed, memories faded, and eventually the stories were lost to history. That is until 1963, when a paper was published, detailing the events of May 1780. Researchers say the 2 dark days may have been caused by coincidence, but some say smoke from the fires in Canada is the best explanation for what happened. Whatever the cause, there's one thing that's certain: it happened twice. But then stopped. Why did the sun go out? Only history knows. But those who lived it never forgot. Imagine spending your life going about your daily routine, watching the sun rise every morning, reliable as clockwork. Then, one day, the sun doesn't rise. You look up in confusion. Then terror as the day grows darker and darker. Your candles burn down, casting grotesque shadows on the walls. You huddle in your home with your loved ones, waiting for the end of the world. And then the sun comes back. What would you think? What would you do? For those living in New England, their lives were disrupted. The sun didn't rise. It was a disaster. But for the rest of us, the dark days are a mystery. Historians debate the cause. Scientists search for answers, and amateur researchers comb through old diaries and records, trying to piece together the puzzle. Maybe someday we'll find the definitive answer. But until then, we're left with questions and theories. Theories about a mysterious dark day in May of 1780, when the sun went out and never returned the same way again. And if you like this video, you'll love our podcast. Each week, we bring you new episodes filled with chilling tales and fascinating mysteries that have yet to be solved. So subscribe now and join us as we continue to uncover more mysteries that history will never repeat. This has been the One Time Files. Rare, strange, true.